Good afternoon.
God bless the saints. God bless you.
Don't you dare God bless the saints me and y'all was over there churching.
That's right.
Don't you start talking to me, like we just start from ground zero or something. Don't you God bless the saints me.
God bless the saints.
How you doing, Mom, Dad?
Wonderful. How are you today?
I am excellent. No complaints here.
Good.
Yeah. So no, we are on episode 9 here of Chatting with the Clays. And man, there's a lot of pressure because we're coming off of a Power Pack episode 8. Y'all ladies, mom, my mother-in-law, my wife, oh my goodness, y'all went at it last week, and there has been so much feedback overwhelmingly that has come in, and folks are asking for round 2 and all of that.
Oh wow.
And I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. We'll get it done. I agree. But I'm a little nervous about episode 9. I don't know how you follow that up, Dad.
So do I need to get up out of my seat right now and leave
No, I'm gonna get up out of my seat and leave. And it's just gonna be Mom talking to the camera. I'm gonna tell Karen to come in here and they can keep going. But no, that was very, very helpful for a very special Mother's Day. And this week, we have many schools around the country that have now started graduating their classes, high schools, many high schools around the country, within the state, within your state, all over, are having their virtual graduation ceremonies in the different ways that they're acknowledging the graduates. Colleges and universities for undergraduates, graduate students, doctoral students, they are having their graduates. So we also, picking up where you were, Dad, want to take a moment just to celebrate the graduates all over, and the family members, the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the grandmas, the big mamas, all of those folks who have been a part of the villages that have raised up these multiple generations of graduates. We salute you, and students. We salute the students who have put in their work as well. We're very, very proud of you. So we just want to bring that congratulations. Yeah. Excellent. And I'm a little biased. The work that I do and where my passions are. So, I didn't want to take any moments for granted to be able to offer our celebration. And really thinking about that thematically with generations of students graduating, regardless of their level of degree attainment, diploma attainment. There's been parents and guardians and all kind of folks, again, in the village who have been involved in that person's evolution, that person's growth, that person's achievement. There's a lot of people who have sown, and then there have been some people who haven't necessarily sown positively because of either their contributions, negativity, or maybe their lack of presence in folks' lives. And that, in turn, has been a form of motivation for students to go on and to do better and to achieve. And we certainly recognize that as well. Because we understand the diversity of experiences. But today, with that preface, I wanted to talk about parenting adult children, right?
Wow.
So parenting adult children, I think, is not only relevant to parents who have children who are adults. It's not just relevant to parents who have teenagers and preteens and younger children, but those parents who have babies, and for those who are thinking about parenting in the future. I think this is a topic that you can't approach too early. And as you know, Karen and I, we have a 2-year-old, and we are already making decisions and putting things in place, not just to secure his present and to make sure he has a great experience now and is developing and being challenged and growing with values and ethics and a spiritual relationship and understanding of who God is. But we're also trying to set up his future right now. So I wanted to consult with you all as you are parenting 3 adult children of your own, plus some, right? So let's pivot. Can you give me a couple of examples, maybe one each, because I got a lot of questions to get through today and Dad's always bothering me. Give me some examples of how parenting changes when your children grow up.
Well, let me just put a little wrench in what you said first. Now,
Okay.
you said you all are parenting a 2-year-old, but I think you have to catch up with him first. He's 12. You know, I've observed him sitting at the laptop, pulling his paper out of the printer,
Yes.
looking like he's doing a Zoom conference and everything. So you're gonna have to catch up with him first of all.
That's the truth.
You're a little behind. You said he's 2, but he's 12. Okay.
That's the truth.
But
Go ahead.
seriously, on the serious side, you all have you really have a tremendous job. I mean, parenting is huge anyway. And this generation that you all have to parent, what was your question?
Some examples of how parenting changes.
No,
See?
my point was, see, I got
you.
But by parenting changing, you all have a huge task in really keeping up with your generation, because even though you are younger than we are, than your parents, but your generation is so much wiser, and with the technology and everything being moving so fast. You know, I mean, in school we used to have semesters, and then they went to quarters. You know, we didn't have quarters at first. Everything was on semesters. And then, like, when I went to college after 10 years of being out of school, I went to a college that was on quarters. And it was so much faster. The learning is so much faster than
on quarters or dimes.
quarters or dimes.
There you go. There they go.
2 dimes and a half of one. How's that? But so you all have to really keep up with the change of the times, because everything is so quick. Everything is so quickly. And I look at Ethan, I look at your son, and how he's not in a daycare, he's in a school. He's really learning. And just to think of, well, even before he was 2 years old, you know, they were learning. They were, you know, they're in such an advanced system now in school of learning, that if you don't keep up with that, your child is really going to be left behind. They're learning, I think he's learning another language. You know, he's not, they're teaching sign language, a foreign language, and just the computer is like secondhand nature to them now. I mean, if they don't have some kind of electronic in their hands, they're going to be left behind. And for us in raising you all, that was unheard of then. And we thought that, you know, when the technology was brought in, when we were raising you all, we just thought, oh, wow, this is so great. But it was nothing like it is today. So you all have to stay on top of things. You have to keep your kids, you have to keep your kids in the know. They have to be on top of that learning curve, or else they're going to be left way behind. And that's a major difference. Then, I mean, we were, when it comes to schooling, you know, well, I don't know if I can say we, because somebody says I was, but anyway, we were on top of the education in our household. But again, it was nothing like it is now with the technology. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's it.
As your mother was talking, and I was just thinking, and with your question, first of all, there are so many books out there, so many authors, and you can take a class just on reading parenting books. But this is one thing that was interesting to me that I found out. First, I found out first I realized that I have never been a father before. So I never had any type of expectation that I put on myself to be. It was an unknown. And then the second thing I realized that all of the people that had good intentions that would volunteer information, that suit wasn't designed for me. So I had to go through the process of learning not what to do before I realized what to do. That's not excluding. I had one major theme in my life, and that was love. That's what I had. And as you can recall, matter of fact, let me remind you, because since you're my youngest child and a great mentor, great man of God, it's not Father's Day yet, but you and your brother are one of the best father and men that I've ever known in my life. And what an honor to be your father.
Thank you, Dad.
But what I found out is, because your mother, I acquaint her to a walking dictionary. If you want to know about an intellectual person that really understands the psyche of man from the learning aspect, is your mother. I'm on the other hand.
Thank you.
I'm on.
You're
more than
Thank
welcome.
you,
and I'm about to pass the offering pantry. Give me something for that. But then I am a lover of people. So what I did with my children, what I did with y'all, I loved on y'all. You remember the times when y'all had to burn candlelight because you didn't get your schoolwork done? And your mother was going to school to be a court reporter. She had the things, and whatnot. So she was going to college. And so as soon as she left the door, as soon as she left the house and shut the door, I saw y'all. I remember you at the kitchen table. I remember y'all at around the table, because you always had to go to the table to do your schoolwork. That way, she knew you was doing it.
Yeah.
And as soon as she left, I said, close up your books. And I'd hug y'all. I said, it's gonna be all right. And you'd be crying and whatnot, and and all of it is good, but I love parenting. It's love. It's a lot of love.
Yes,
it's love when you don't understand even what you're doing. Y'all didn't know I didn't know how to raise kids. Y'all didn't know that.
No, sir.
I didn't even know it. But I made sure you didn't know I didn't know what I was doing.
Yes.
But love brought me through. And praise God for salvation.
Yeah.
And I understand then, and it helped me to go into the book of Proverbs. Actually, Proverbs was designed, if you do your due diligence, do your study, it also talks about men, talks about the males, talks about sons and fathers. And so I got a lot out of the book of Proverbs when it comes down to children. So, anybody. Then don't expect anybody to pat you over the back and say, good job. What does a good job mean? I just made my son cry.
Right.
I just made my daughter cry. What you mean good job?
Right.
So that's just some of the things that I learned. And we learn as we go. The other thing that I will pass it, I was young. We had our children young. And sometimes, to me, that was a blessing, because we was young enough, and we was able, I married your mother She was 19 years old. I was 21. So we were able to grow with y'all. So here's two young adults raising brand new children in a world that is so ugly. And love brings life, and love brings happiness when you love on your children. And that was powerful. So the love I did, and I got in trouble because when your mom next day, did y'all finish your schoolwork? And I told y'all, I'll handle it. Boy, did not get it.
She handled you.
Man, I got moved over with a lawnmower. Man, but I took it. My shoulders are strong enough. Anyway, that's it. Okay.
Oh my goodness. So let me and I appreciate that. I'm just gonna fast forward because it's not Father's Day, but I appreciate that. I appreciate you too. So talk a little bit about and each give one example of a lesson you learned when your children became adults. How did your parenting shift then?
I'll start with this one. What happened to me? I looked at my children grown and said, listen, I didn't teach you that. Where'd you get that from? And then y'all let me know. Y'all, you know what? Y'all let me know with love that Dad, what you put in us, that's what we're doing now. But then when I looked, I said, I don't do you like, when I see my grandchildren, and I see, don't do my grandchildren like that. I didn't do y'all like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then y'all blame me, said, Dad, you didn't let us get away with it. I'm older now. Look at the word grand. What does grand mean? Affix that with the word father. So I get to do things now I couldn't do then. And yes, now I'm worn out. I don't have the patience. I don't have the energy. Do you remember when I raced your sister in the backyard when we was younger? She thought she could beat me running. Man, I took out. Clay, why are you laughing? I beat your sister. And then I end up in the hospital.
Paid a high price.
I had paid a high price. Yeah, so anyway, man, that's another story. But go ahead. Clay, you still there? Mr. Clay?
Mute. I've had to mute my computer all these episodes. I'm not going to touch that race. Please, Mom.
Yeah, I was at work in a meeting. But I think, that transition from parenting young children to parenting adults, probably, and you say give an example, even the hardest part for me was taking a step back, because I was so involved and so indulged in my children's lives and decision making, and I always wanted you all to make what I felt was the right decisions, and always wanted to give my advice on trying to steer you in the right way, what I felt was the right way or whatever. And so just being a big influence in your direction and your decisions in life. The biggest part, again, making that transition now that you're an adult, I had to really learn that you have to take that step back and trust that you put the right things in your children, you taught them right, and you have to trust that they're going to make the right decision. And that was really hard for me because, in my eyes, even though now all three of you adult, you're still my children. And so that mothering, that protective aspect, that just wanting the best for you all, that's a hard thing to kind of corral and pull back on, because you always want the best for your children. And when you're younger, you can tell them we could tell our children what to do.
Yeah, y'all could.
There was no discussion about, what do you think? It's like,
Right.
No, this is what you do.
Right.
this is the right thing and this is what's best for you. Now, you may not have liked it, but we didn't have discussions on, well, no, Mom, this is what we thought. No, Dad, this is what we think. But, you know, your dad and I said, no, this is how it is. So, you know, just stepping back and saying, you know, I can't do that anymore. They're adult. Mm-hmm. I have to trust that now they're going to make the right decision. They may not want my input. I mean, my feelings have been hurt a lot of times thinking, hey, I can tell Quentin what to do now, but no, I can't.
You mean
because
he hurt
he's
your
an
feelings?
adult.
He hurt
You
your
know?
feelings? He hurt your feelings? He did.
You know, any of the three of you, you know, because, and then they would say, well, no, Mom, no, I think it's this way. And I find myself saying, wait a minute, they're adult now. You know, they are going to make their own decisions. So that was a hard transition.
Let me extract from there because I'm going somewhere.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll come right back to that, Dad.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
My apologies. But I wanted to catch something in this moment here. There's a pain point, right, between children and parents because often
there's a what?
There's a pain point.
A pain. Okay.
There's a pain point between children and parents because what parents want to do is proliferate. Excuse me, I can't talk today. Parents want to proliferate their experience and their successes, right? You want to multiply it. You want to say, this worked for me and I got good results, and I want to proliferate it. I want that to be a part of what you do. Take the good that I do and the good that I've learned and replicate that in your own life in the directions that you're going. And the pain point sometimes comes from we're not looking at the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. You can look at an issue from a person who is of your age that's been through what you've been through. We're looking at an issue as children, and whatever ages we reach and whatever stage and decision that we're making or issue that we're trying to move through, and our vantage point is different. So sometimes the two vantage points becomes the conflict because you're looking backwards on something or you're looking at something from an informed perspective. And when we're on the other side of that, we're looking to something not with the reservoir of experiences that you have, or the perspective of having been through it. And everybody, to an extent, wants their unique experience. Everyone wants to exercise their tools. Everyone wants to sort of measure their growth in life by seeing how they deal with certain obstacles. And those two perspectives, even though both are loving and both want to be successful in those moments, those perspectives are at a conflict. So here goes my question. How did the two of you, what kind of conversation did the two of you have? And I'll leave my other two siblings out of it. I'll throw myself in it. When you've seen me make a choice that didn't turn out well, what was the conversation that you all had between the two of you that you didn't have with me? And there's another question I'm gonna ask after that.
Okay. I said to your mother, that's your child. That's your son.
That's your baby.
That's your baby.
I believe that.
That's what I said. Because I said he didn't get that from me.
See?
He got that from your side. He got that from you. Yeah. See what I'm saying? Yeah. And then I went on. Then I went on fishing because I let her deal with her baby. But let me add this one in. I knew, even today, without any reservation, any question, there's no doubt, we gave the best we could. And we're blessed to yet be alive, to yet give the best we give. Once you become a parent, you never go back. You'll be a parent until the Lord calls you home. But what happens is we have the wheel. And over time, we don't reinvent the wheel. You just put new tires on the same rim.
But that sounds good and everything. But you avoided the question. He said, what did the conversation look like?
He was being nice.
Okay, now.
He was being nice. For once, he was being nice. So I'm talking about specifically with me. Y'all have seen me make many decisions that didn't pan out. What conversation did the two of y'all have in those moments?
let me give you the case in point. Case, and then the point.
Thank you, Mom.
One case was you, and I don't think you mind this one.
I don't mind. That's why I asked. Yeah.
You did something that just rattled your mother's nerves, and she was so frustrated with you.
My baby.
Your baby did this, and so she went back in her lineage and picked up some of the African traits and went back to playing how to play drums, congos.
Mm-hmm.
So she physically, on your back, start playing a rhythm. And it was all over. You tried to hide test grades from her. You're grown in college. Because as a parent, your mother said, he's still my child. And we're paying for his education, and he has to do what we put into him. And I told your mother, now that was the case. Now here's the point. The point was
he was better than that.
Now wait a minute. Now you see what happened? Now you can imagine what happened. I'm trying to get to the point now. The point was, I said, listen, he knows you have to give him his space enough to make an adult mistake, even though it's nerve-wracking to you. Now, that doesn't mean when you allow that. And this was because we knew conversation, we're going to be there anyway. But he had to learn the lesson. But your mother, just like you're shaking her head now, she is not understanding all of her education, all of her knowledge, all of her wit. She wants to sit down and crash.
Because he was a straight A student, he knew better.
But as an adult, he had them geared. What happened was that gear got stuck. And it got stuck. So what you did, that drum beat that you placed on the back of his back was able to loosen up that gear and cause everything to work again.
Mm-hmm. 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 You know what? And let me do this, Mom, before you get to your response. Dad talks about putting a pin in it. So, an interesting question that I had come in, and again, these are just conversations we have. So, I'm certainly not a news reporter or any of that, and we can go any direction we want. So what becomes really interesting is, and my wife and I talk about this a lot, there was something I learned from you all that you never intended to teach. And it's manifested in the moment that you just talked about. And the beautiful thing, I laugh because I wasn't a straight A student, but in my mom's mind, I was, right? There was maybe a time or two or three or four or 5 or 6.
You couldn't tell her. You couldn't tell you want to. But
right?
Listen, because why? All 3 of her children, our children, she knows because she gave y'all straight A attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She gave y'all straight A time.
That's excellent.
She let y'all know that you were the cream of the crop. You were less than nobody. And she put everything in you to be success or successful and succeed. And we know success and succeeding, you know what I'm saying? So that's why, and today, she still feels like that. That is one thing with parenting. Parenting does not mean that a child will not have some displaced frustration, anger, or try to conveniently have amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
But because it's in y'all. So that parenting, and today, she's looking at y'all from that. But as we grow and as we realize that, I think sometimes, have you ever heard the word or this conversation, the response to this conversation? Who's going to be the adult in this problem? You have 2 adults, but who's going to be the adult? So that means one of us is having a childlike mentality. You never see children raised what is not supposed to be. that children raise adults. Adults raise children. Adults should have never put children in a place that they have to raise themselves or be the adult, because if the child doesn't go through the transition, sometimes as they get older, if that child did not go through the stages, and as they get older, some of them feelings will come back. And have you ever seen an adult act like a child? Child is waiting. Something's missing. So they have to go through the system. And through adult mistakes, you have to go through the system. If you don't go through the system, it's going to come back. I think somebody said that when you get old, that men will get toys, you know, an older man with a toy. What is that toy? Well,
expensive cars, motorcycles,
you know,
ATVs,
different things, you know. So this is the point. We are in a society, and I was one of them, and praise be to God that I was not the one that really fell through the cracks. Raised by a single mother. My mama had to be the dad and the mom at the same time. That affects a boy child. When the boy, let me cut to the chase.
Okay.
I didn't really have a male figure in my life. My first male figure in my life was my pastor. Last year we buried him at 86 or something. Because when you're raised up in the family, pretty much on, you know, there's no other males. Your mama had to balance both of them, and she did the best she could. A mother can only raise that male child to a certain point. That male has to see other males in their life. If not, then sometimes the males, they get abusive to women too. You know, and it's a terrible thing for a mother to tell a young boy that, you know, there's no father in the house, that you are the head of the house. No. But I understand. I understand the thinking. See, understand makes you process things. It don't mean that you agree with it. So one thing I said within myself, if I ever had children, I'll do this, 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 and this. That's what I was thinking, because there was a void left. And so that's why I started off saying, love worked for me.
Right.
For me to be blessed to have 2 male children, and I was now at the point where I had to show them how to be a father in a home when I came out of a home that didn't have a father. Books couldn't do it.
Right.
So that's why when you went to college and did the things to do, and your mom was so, you know, she was, man, she was, you know, what do you call it? Rigid. I was so flexible because I'm enjoying these 2 males that I have to put a footprint in their life. Not saying I wanted to be like me, but I wanted them to be the best that I could give them, you know? And so that's why I did what I did. And even today, man, I look up on y'all, and I remember, you know, how to shave and how to dress. And you are such a very stylish young man. I mean, you look like you just popped out of Vogue magazine. GQ magazine.
Thank you.
You know. Then I looked back and said, you know, I wonder where you got that from.
See, I knew there was a U-turn there. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let me connect a couple things and go back to a point here, because I still want to serve you up.
I just had to say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good, sir. Please. I wanted to also serve up Mom the opportunity to respond here. But something unintentionally that you all taught, and Dad, based on your background coming up from a single parent home, Mom, a home where divorce was there very, very early in your life, you all taught something that you didn't intend to teach. And when you bring up the analogy of what happened when I was in college, and again, to exonerate myself, you had
I knew you were going to say it sooner or later.
I got to protect my rep, you know. But you had saw some grades from early on in my college career because I didn't have to report them. You didn't see them. And I made, and this really makes this conversation interesting, I made the adjustments without telling you all I was even in trouble. And once I made the adjustments and I'm getting ready to graduate on the back end, and the Lord is still dealing with me to forgive on this one, I got in trouble for something that had occurred and had been corrected. But because you found out at, and right when I was applying to grad school, I'm printing off these transcripts and you saw some grades you didn't like, you got mad at something that was years old and then played the drums as Dad would put it up my back and in other areas. You know, statute of limitations applies, I think. But I was so upset. I said, I made the correction, the adjustment. I dug myself out of the hole. And she was still mad. And I'm like, Mom, this is 3 years ago. Still didn't care. Blacked out, just like a shark. Eyes went black, just went crazy. But anyway, but what you all taught that you didn't.
Didn't you call your brother to help you out?
I called him later, and I thought I was complaining in private, and Mom heard it, and she came around the corner, you know, and there was another problem. And I'm like, man, your mom's crazy, man. Get your mom, and Mom goes, get your wife, and I'm like, but what you all taught, and this is what Karen and I have talked about that you didn't intend, you all taught us to almost step in a parental role as children. And it's a connecting point to what you were saying. Dad, single parent household, mom, divorced at an early age. And what you all taught us was, if you can deal with it and keep that off of mom and dad, then do it. That's your responsibility. And there were things between the three of us. There's stories we could tell, and you all's jaws would drop and eyes would well up in tears. There's novels that me and my two siblings can introduce to you all, things we went through in our life that we managed ourselves to keep it off of you. And you didn't intend to teach that. And you never told us, well, this is how I grew up and I did this. And because it was a single parent household, Mom never knew. And this is the trouble I was in, and I fixed it, and Mom never knew. Mom never said, my parents were divorced at an early age, and I managed this, and I kept it from Mom, and I kept it from Dad, because they went through a divorce, and we didn't want it to be one more thing. Both of y'all grew up in challenging financial situations and times, and you all did things to try to take that load and that expectation and that grief and burden off of your parents. We learned it, and y'all never taught it. And if you look at all three of us, you would see that all three of us, and you all know this, all three of us learned something that you never taught. So not only as a parent do sometimes we have to deal with, you know, the lessons that you intended to teach, to your earlier comment, that your kids never learn, but then you have to deal with the lessons you didn't intend to teach that your kids pick up. And that was one lesson that's manifested across the three of us. And it's helped us all become independent. But all of us, I think, probably grew up a little faster than the way we were supposed to, because for whatever reason, that's something that permeated into the three of us. And we tried to keep those things separate because we saw everything that was on your plate. And just like you said, Dad, it was a love thing. You all showed your love toward us, and we all, in our private ways, were trying to show our love back to you by trying to manage our affairs and our own crises. And some of them just clearly came to the surface, and you all see and you knew. But there are other things that we were really good at hiding, and half will never be told, and I'm sworn to secrecy by them other two, so I won't even bring it up.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let me pose this question. How does something like that happen? How do you all teach such a clear lesson to your children unintentionally, where the three of us even pick that up? And this I know is going to help some other parents, because there's some other lessons, you know, again, that have grave implications, you know, that parents are learning, and they're like, wow, you know. And it's not a mistake, by the way, you know. I don't want another parent to think that's a mistake, but those are things that can just happen. So how do you all speak to that when you see it manifested in your adult children? Things you didn't intend to teach that you see represented in your children that they've learned.
The book of Isaiah 28, 10th chapter, 28 chapter 10th verse says, for precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. I think that kind of sums it up. It's like a parent is an example. It's the first example a child ever sees in life. And my mom used to say to us, because she had the first Montessori daycare in Iowa, actually, and especially in Des Moines. And so she taught 3 and 4-year-olds. But she would always say, messed up adults make messed up children when situations are bad. And then they become messed up adults. So it's cyclical. And so she said, that's the reason why you have to be careful, the example that you set before children. Because we always say, well, adults, oh, they're jacked up, they're messed up, this. But it goes back to that example they saw as a child. Mm-hmm. Whether it's an example they saw or the lack of example that they saw. That's clearer to them than what they hear. What they see is bigger than what they hear. What they see makes a greater impression than what they hear. So, and that's the reason, again, I read that scripture, because what comes out of your mouth may be one thing, but what your children hear is really what they see. Mm-hmm. It's not what you're saying, it's what they see, because your actions cancel out everything that you say. And that's the reason why, again, even the word of the Lord teaches us to let your nay be nay, your yea be yea. You have to live the life that you say you believe in. You have to be intentional, because if not your children, but somebody else, they're watching you and they can see you before they hear you. So I think that's the reason, well, I know that's the reason why you end up teaching or setting examples or teaching a lesson that you may not intentionally meant to teach verbally, because your actions overrule everything that comes out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. So even though we were probably saying something else when we were trying to teach you that lesson, but because of the experiences that we had, mm-hmm. our actions were greater than what came out of our mouths. Mm-hmm. So the things that the three of you picked up or saw or learned from us was that thing that we saw in life, because probably our parents would say to us, or even say to you, if you asked them that question, well, that wasn't the example I was trying to set for them, because I told them this, but we ended up seeing something else. So we knew I knew at an early age that I had to do whatever I had to do to help my mom out, because we were there with her. Mm-hmm. But she didn't tell me that you have to do what you have to do to help me out. That's a good point. You know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me piggyback on that, Mom. So, let me piggyback on that, Mom, because Dad took his time and your time. I'm getting even now. You're gonna tell on me being broadcast live. I'm getting you back. So then, how do you speak to parents? You know, in those I guess the better framing of this question, I didn't write it out well. What do you learn as parents while you're parenting adults? And I'll even sort of give you a couple of sub-points just to help move it along a little bit. But not all things you see in your kids you taught, and those things could be good. They may demonstrate some things and you're like, wow, I don't know where that came from. Maybe I didn't play an instrument, or I wasn't an athlete, or that wasn't my passion, and I see it in my kids. And then what other things do you learn when you see your children become adults, as it relates to, you did the right things, and maybe even to the admission of your adult children, they chose different than what was right. The example was there, the conversation was there, and then the choice was still different. So what kind of things do you all learn along the way in sort of those two layers when you see your children turning as adults, and you see things again on both ends of that spectrum.
All right.
The mom.
Oh, I'm
Mom.
sorry. Go ahead.
Mom.
Yeah,
But
I guess,
you know, I find myself doing this a lot since you all have been adult. Mentally going back to where I was at your age. Because I would say, why are they doing this or that? That's not what I told them. That's not what I taught them. But when I sit and I think, but when I was 30 years old, when I was 36, how was I processing? How was I handling things? And that really helps me to answer that question, to settle things in myself. It may not have been what I would recommend or what I'd advise you, but I think at that age, I felt like that too. And my mom couldn't tell me either. And she wouldn't have wanted, you know, me to do things that way or make that decision or whatever. And I know she didn't put that in me, but just remember, you know, I talk to myself, just remember when you were that age, just remember, you always didn't make the right decision either. Just remember, you did some things that even today, if your parents knew, it would make their heads spin too, you know, and they would probably say, where'd she get that from? I didn't teach her that. So that helps me to settle those questions. I try to take myself back to that period in my life, you know, because again, you can't forget that none of us got it right. None of us got life right. We're still living life and we've made mistakes and everything. And I think we've all said, even from the time we were younger, when I become an adult, I'm going to do things this way because we didn't like the way our parents did something. Mm-hmm. But then when it was our turn, now we have to take it because our kids are probably saying, when I, you know, become an adult, I'm going to do things differently. So again, just knowing you put the right things in your children, just knowing you did the best job that you could do, and just knowing, hey, you weren't perfect either. You know, you didn't always make that decision that your parent told you to make, you know, and give them grace. You know, we all need some grace.
One
Superintendent, help us, sir, please.
Oh, well, you're such a kind young man. This is what your mother and I did. You set bars.
Yeah.
You set goals. And there's something about African-American sanctified male that is such a blessing to this world. We're able to set and give you bars, short-term goals, long-term goals. And to reiterate, you're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. You've never done this before. Let me back up. I've never been married before. I had to learn how to be a husband. I never had children before. I had to learn how to be a father. I've never been 62 years old. I'm learning how to be older now. And I'm learning how to respect my sons that are men. The Lord says the same, well, your brother's 41 and you're 36.
You got it.
A man has to let a man be a man. This is what's interesting. Not to take the time, I'm going to give back to your mother. If you go to the book of Titus 2 mm-hmm. and verse 2, look at what's interesting. Verse 1 says, speak the things which become sound doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
This is what always interested me. But in Titus 2 and 1, it says that the aged men be sober. Titus 2 and 2. It says, in other words, teach the older men to exercise self-control, to be worthy of respect, to live wise, and they must be sound in faith and filled with love and patience. When you're teaching men, when you're teaching fathers, that is powerful. Do you know not that men really respect true men? And the real man has really stood on the shoulders of another man. None of us have been this way or passed this way before.
Yes, sir.
And so when we look at transition of time, your thinking changes. Do you not know that? And never, first of all, never live in regret. Never live in the past. And I've taught my sons, I've taught y'all, never let somebody hold you to your mistakes in the past, because we are evolving. And so for me to teach another man, first of all, even though I've been and I'm older, it doesn't mean that I've experienced as a man what you have experienced as my son that is a man.
It's heavy.
I have experienced life as a man that another man may not have experienced, but it doesn't make me greater than that other man. What unites us together is when a man can embrace a man and say, I feel you, bro. When I can, every time I see my sons, I hug y'all. I got nothing but love for y'all. I can love y'all and hate the clothes you wear.
Yeah.
I can love you and say, you got some stinky cologne on, but I love you anyway. Now, I don't know why you wear something like that. I never wore it. I still love you, you know. Men have different tastes. But to respect a man as a man and let him know that iron sharpens iron.
Yes, sir.
Men can cry on each other's shoulders and still be a man.
Mm-hmm.
A man could be wrong. And we're not trying to see how wrong you are.
Right.
But if you're wrong, be a strong man and be wrong.
Yeah.
You know what a strong man does when he's wrong? Admits, I was wrong.
Yeah.
And another man is not going to hold you to your wrong.
Yeah.
Well, we tell you, it's part of growing old.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So the balance is to where we are not trying to bring in all of the world's ills into our lives. You have a son that you have to raise. I don't care how you lay it out for him in the way that he should go. Your son, when he gets grown, he's gonna do what he want to do.
Yeah.
But he's still your son.
Yes, sir.
With y'all, with the mistakes that we had, you're still my son. But then there's a way, I like the Bible says, listen here, come here, son. Let me show you a more excellent way. Now, when I show you an excellent way, then does it mean that you have to take it? No, but then I relate it. If we put what's right in them as a child, when he get old, it won't depart.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mom, let me serve you what may be the final question, because we got 6 minutes left. But you all are really sharing some helpful information. Another thing my wife and I talk about, which I think sometimes there's not voice given to it in the most constructive ways, because I've heard the conversation among other people, and it really sort of pricked me in a way that I wanted to bring this for you all to share some wisdom. While I'm living, and this is connected to the points you all were making, but especially Dad's points, a moment ago, while we're living, because we're now making choices as adults, sometimes that feels like a condemnation of your parents or your guardians or whoever raised you, right? Because if I make a decision now that was different than the decision that my parent made, am I judging the decisions that they made by making a different choice? And you all probably can identify with this at a heavier level because of your age. You've lived through more life. You are now matriarch and patriarch of your own families, right? And you are running your family units in the influence of matriarch and patriarch. And you do that at a level that has to be different and unique than your parents. So how do you sort of speak to that level of balance, if you will? You all are looking at your children. You all are looking at your children make choices on both ends. You're still, in many ways, whether your parents are still with us or deceased, you're still evaluating their choices because you're hitting places and milestones that they previously hit before you. So how do you sort of rationalize and grapple with all of those layers converging all at one time?
I'm gonna take 1 minute.
Is that mom? No, mom got to take it. Mom got to take it.
No.
Mom got to take it, mom. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for conceding, Superintendent. Go ahead, mom.
1 minute.
Take us home, mom. Dad got them gospel minutes. Them gospel minutes got like a 5-to-1 ratio.
No, you give me one minute.
Nope. Dad got them gospel minutes. Go ahead, mom.
She's gonna give me 1 minute. 1 minute. Just 1 minute.
Mom, you gonna give in? Don't do it. Don't do it, mom. Mother's Day just passed. No plan.
1 minute. The African story, The Lion King.
The Lion
King.
Yeah.
There they go. I'm calling you after this, Dad. Troublemaker.
I'm done.
Please, mom.
Well, again, I think us having enough grace, one, and enough maturity to know that people make their own decisions, and being able to step back and say, again, that I did what I needed to do, as a parent. And the rest, I have to step back and just let it be. Because, again, just remembering that where you came from as an individual, that we didn't always make the decisions that were, as you say, reflective, or was taught to us or shown to us, that people are just going to make their own decisions once they become an adult. And to even be mature enough to understand, just because their decisions aren't what you would make, it's not necessarily a reflection of where they come from, or who was their teacher in life. So just being mature enough, because again, we all know, and we say it when we get into contentions with people and things, that you can't make grown people do anything, but it's really true. When people are adults, they make their own decisions, be it good or bad. They make their own decisions, and we have to be adult enough to understand, or to realize, that their decisions not necessarily a reflection of where they come from, or who taught them, or who raised them. So that's pretty much that's it, the point to it all, that you just can't, so, and decisions aren't always bad decisions just because they're opposite.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then speak, and this is the other place I want to get to without sort of shaping or contouring your answers too much, but speak a little bit of healing, because I know having friends and being connected to all kinds of people, there's some parents who are struggling with their children, right? Because they feel and they sense, and maybe words have even been said and expressed at some point, but they feel that there's a level of judgment and contentiousness and animosity toward them in the way that they parented, and whatever that means, for that child or that person that was raised. So speak a little word of healing and encouragement, because I have seen it play out where parents with children, there's that level of animosity and strife between them because they feel as parents, they're being judged by seeing the actions and the courses and the things that are being said by the ones that they raised. So speak a little bit of healing to those circumstances and those folks.
And always, again, as a parent or as an adult, always consider yourself not being right all the time. You're not always right. It's not the point of you being right or wrong. And you're never too big to even talk to your children and even apologize. Even, keep your relationship open enough that you can communicate with your adult children. Because I think I've shared with the three of you all at various times in your lives and have said, well, you know what? If you didn't think, or if this didn't look like, or if you felt, I'm really sorry, because I was a parent for the first time too. And I did what I felt was right, or I did what I thought was right. So just being able to communicate with your children. Don't ever get to a place where you're so bottled up, so angry, so hurt to where you can't talk to your children. I think that probably will pose the biggest regret in anyone's life because you never know. You never know. Again, I can testify that I had a stroke. My biggest struggle was my memory, being able to bring my words back. I don't know 30, 40 years from now where I'll be if I'm still living. I don't know if one of my children will have to take care of me. And, I laugh and joke with the grandkids all the time and tell them the reason I spoil them is because I want to make sure they're going to take care of me and not put me in a home, a senior citizens home. And so, but you want to always keep that relationship to where your children will love you, be able to take care of you or want to take care of you when that time comes. But if you're mean and surly and full of regrets and revenge and all that stuff, that can turn out to be a bad situation.
Yes.
Don't let your children anger. Don't let your children anger be based on your experience. If you're a single mother and that man walked out from you, and that's the father of your children, don't be so angry that your anger is vented out on your children.
Yes.
If it's reverse, if mama walked out, we have a lot of Mr. Moms that are raising their children. Don't let the decisions of the adults don't have your children bear that burden.
Yeah.
Mothers, don't blame yourself. You can't make nobody stay with you. Don't blame yourself and say that if I didn't have these children, I probably could have had my husband. Don't do that. Don't do that. Life is full of unfortunate things that can happen to us. Make the best of it. Don't be so bitter because you had to put your life on hold to raise your children. That was your responsibility. Life can drop a bombshell on you, but you have the power to rise up and come out of it. Don't get bitter when your children don't come back to tell you thank you. If you never get a Mother's Day card, don't be angry with them. Keep reaching out. If they miss your birthday, if they miss Valentine's Day, Grandma's Day, any other day that's out there, don't get angry. You understand this. The children don't owe us anything.
Yes.
Now, should they do things? They'll only do things for love. I've given my 3 children love. If y'all never give me nothing else, I know I love you and still love you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I could go on and on. Love. Put a lot of love in it. And let healing take place. Mm-hmm. If that child don't call you, call that child. Mm-hmm. Don't call them to bug them. Just call them and say, I love you. Got nothing but love for you. Mm-hmm. Hate the sin. love the person. The same person that is wrong, good things can come out of. And you'd be surprised what love can do. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes should not perish, but have everlasting life. You can bring some healing out of love. The Lord bless you. Praise God for you, preacher.
Absolutely. Well,
this was excellent. God.
I appreciate you all, and I think this conversation is a key and a critical one, because we all sit in dual roles, right? We're siblings, we're parents, we're children, we're grandchildren, we're grandparents. All those things layered at the same time. We're learning all of those experiences. They're actually resources, right? And the enemy would come and make it to be divisive, where, things are in your mind and perceptions are being held and feelings are being held. And once we internalize these things, then we start to let it poison what could be very, very healthy relationships, because all the diverse perspectives in our lives only come to strengthen us to see things from so many angles. And again, I would even say from this vantage point of conversation, being a child and a parent, but in this instance, being a child, we want to be very, very careful, because we're still making decisions and choices. And if we judge harshly and life deals us a turn and an unexpected circumstance, and we're not in the right frame of mind, or we have some competing priorities and we pick the wrong ones, so to speak, our children can certainly view us with a level of harshness that we could look at those that raised us, So we do want to be sensitive. When you all say you were 19 and 20, 21, starting a family, that resonates, on so many levels, regardless of what age folks are when they start their families. But 19 and 21, your brain isn't even all the way developed yet. No one is. No matter how smart you are, no matter what your foundation was, no matter how saved you are, you're still growing and developing. So, the love, I think, sort of gives us, that adhesive glue to stay together as families, and then to see the opportunity in learning from one another. But thank you all for having that conversation, for being that vulnerable. For all those that are watching this channel, again, continue to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell on YouTube so you have the opportunity to see when there's new content. We appreciate you all. We love you all. Love on your families. Call somebody after this episode. Call a parent, friend, someone who's played a role in your life, raising you and contributing to who you are. Just let them know you appreciate and love them. And until the next time, we will pray for you and love you. And we certainly will give you a call, Mom and Dad, after this. Thanks again for being available. And we'll talk to you soon.
God bless.
Love you.
All right. Love you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.